A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to Tuesday's edition of the Evening Review. My name is Tewenja Bella, your host. Tonight on the show, we are privileged for having, as a matter of fact, tonight we are going international and we are having on set Bishop Joshua Maponga, or Maponga J as he likes to be called. He's a prominent motivational speaker, social entrepreneur and musician also from Zimbabwe. A lot of you, my viewers, I know you know of the man. And he is here, he's in the country on a mission that he will touch on as we go on. Mr. Maponga, thank you very much for making time, really.
Thank you kindly for inviting me into your space. At your own risk, of course.
At my own risk. You say we must always take risks, so I'm prepared for this one.
Okay.
No, so it's a privilege, sir, because I'm a keen follower of your pronouncements, of your philosophies, of your ideas of Africa, and particularly the black man. So I'm so privileged to have you here. Maybe just to start with, Poya Media, which is a local media communications company, is hosting Farmers of Thought, which are you are the CEO of Farmers of Thought. If you can expand on that, on your mission here as far as Farmers of Thought is concerned.
Firstly, I want to appreciate the Namibian community,
yes,
at home and abroad. I even got a call from an army general in Japan, who says, "You are here, you're going to my home country, go and greet them there."
Okay.
But firstly, what we see here is an integration of businesses.
Yes.
Where I've been living in South Africa for more than 30 years plus. I'm originally from Zimbabwe. And for me to choose a company in Namibia to actually run my PR stuff because of their professionalism. And they say, can you take this concept into a regional space? So initially, Farmers of Thought is about growing your brand, while I'm also growing my brand. I cannot afford the Faucis and etc. of Europe and the Mackenzies of America to carry my product. But if we can begin to feed into each other as local companies, we may find that the synergy and the symbiosis of movement of business within ourselves, we can begin to do Poya Media business in Zimbabwe. I can bring my business to Namibia, and this same company, Poya, will be able to take us to Botswana, to South Africa, to Zimbabwe, to Ghana, to Egypt, and to Germany, and we'll come back. So firstly, it's just the integration of Africans beginning to do business with each other. But as for the mission for coming here, it is to begin a conversation, a storytelling. Not just storytelling as of sitting under the moon and stars in the evenings, sitting around a fire and telling a story. Now, the different ways of telling stories these days, through social media, through TV and radio. So we come here to plant the Farmers of Thought concept, where every African child must begin to straighten up their backs and say, why am I here? How am I here? What is it that I have in my hands? If you suppose call me in my preaching days, I would have taken it to Moses when the Lord asked him, what is it that you have in your hand? And Moses said, I only just have but a stick. And the Lord says to him, that's sufficient. You put your stick down, take it up, you know the story. But by the time the Israelites are out of bondage, that small little piece of wood was actually the potential and the capacity of a military. So therefore, small things become big things when they are placed in big hands. Therefore, the estate of the mind, which is the thinking process, the estate of reproduction, and the estate of the land.
Yes.
And how does an African child with a contaminated estate of the mind manage the middle estate and produce the lower estate? It is therefore dangerous to give the African land when he does not own the land above his ears. So the Farmers of Thought, therefore, has to come back to the African child and introduce the African child to the wealth that we have, intellectual wealth, reproductive wealth, and earth wealth. And how does every African child put their hands on those three estates and champion a new cause for the African people? We cannot be thinking like whites and hoping that we can solve black problems. We need a new software altogether. Because as long as we are using this colonial software, we'll be making money in Africa and spending it on European things, while our own villages and communities are still languishing in poverty. That is what I call the degradation of a society.
No, wonderful. So farmers of thought is what? Is there a concept? Is it an institution? If you can reflect on it a little bit.
It's a fluid institution, which it started off on a social media space, where I wanted to start off social conversations, because then I had an option of either building a building and putting students who can come sit and write exams. And I discovered maybe that would take me longer to achieve the mission. How about all the students and graduates that are out there who are just looking for a platform where we can argue alternative concepts of political governance, medical, interventions, pharmaceutical issues, fashion issues, religious conversations. So we have actually 7 streams, and some people might think that I'm as chaotic and confused. But if you look very carefully in my writings, there are only 7 subjects that I constantly swing into, from fashion to entertainment, to education, to spirituality, to governance, to environmental issues, and I go back again, and I go back again. It's almost like a wiper in front of a car, and slowly trying to clean up the screen so that the African child, while driving in these muddy waters of globalization, we can be able to look at it clearly. Because I think many of our governments, if we're not careful, we are driving to doom. Because we cannot even see where we're going. I hear some leaders talking about globalization, globalization. I asked them one question, which they've never answered me. What will the African be in that global village? Question number 2, who will be the chief in that global village? 3, you and your people. What is your contribution into the global village? And to find, no, it's a beautiful statement to say that we're heading for globalization. Are you aware that your children are going to be in test tubes? Are you aware that you're going to become mechanicals and your countries are going to be surrogate economies of those that, are you aware that they're actually planning to disappear somewhere else and reduce some population on Earth? Are you aware that you are not human beings, you are centers of resources? And to have leadership that is not fully looking at the global monsters and their appetite for African resources without respecting the owners of the resources, that worries me.
Indeed. So I spoke on Africa Day last week. I said on social media that, because we talk about the liberation of Africa, and you just referred to something now about having some new software. And it ties in with what I was saying, that we need to liberate the mind also. It's not just political freedom in Namibia from colonial South Africa, but that we also liberate the mind so that we also understand the duties of leadership. That you are not just a leader to be worshipped, Honorable Honorable Joshua or Honorable Toivo, but to really understand the concept of servitude. That for me itself is also an indicator of a liberated mind. Do you share the same?
The liberation of the mind, I must say, we fall into the trap of using popular sentiments, but poor theology or poor application. Because liberation of the mind, it's such a huge concept on its own that challenges education head on, that challenges governance head on, that challenges pharmaceuticals, fashion, entertainment, and our view of our own environment, and better still, our spirituality and our culture. So when you are saying liberating the mind, it sounds very nice. We liberate the mind. The question is how? We thought by fighting the war that we'll be able to liberate the mind. Because it means that therefore we have instruments of power to design our own curriculums, to design our own medicines, to design our own buildings, and design our own businesses. The shock of our lives is that we came into political office with the political slogans, but when we found what we found in those offices was a cluster of rules and regulations. For you to be a doctor, these are the rules. For you to own land, these are the rules. For you to practice medicine in the country, these are the rules. For you to run a country, this is the constitution. And therefore you take a whole leader who is coming with all the zeal of, I'm going to change the country, and you drop him in a bucket of frozen water. And all of a sudden, they find themselves as a custodian of a list of legislative frameworks
Yeah.
from which they cannot liberate themselves.
Yeah.
To which I say, the political excitement did not come with the psychological preparation of a transformative African governance system that would therefore say no to Roman Dutch law.
Yeah.
We're not Romans and we're not Dutch.
Yeah.
Why are we still being ruled by London? Why are we being ruled by the Dutch? We say no to this method of medicine. We also have our traditional leaders here who can deal with these issues. How do we put them into mainline? You would find that now we have Africans who are sitting at the Institute of Health and Services and etc., who are actually a nuisance to the indigenous people with a list of rules of why and how an African cannot be an African. Yeah. You must register, you must be regulated, you must be this, you must be that. So we have all these regulatory bodies and SOEs that are actually now managing the colonial project to make sure that Africans never experience their freedom. What we have now, we call freedom, I call it neo-colonialism, because our own comrades are now the custodians
Indeed.
of the system to make sure that the poverty and the pain of the African continues until we have a political leadership, revolutionary, such as Magufuli, revolutionary, such as Mugabe, revolutionary, such as Lumumba, revolutionary, such as Kwame Nkrumah, who can one morning stand up and say, no, enough of this. We are taking back our land. Hey, there's a law. There's a law. And Mugabe says, where is the law? No, there's a law. Go and change it.
Exactly. We go for a quick break. We go for a quick break and revert back for second half with Bishop Maponga. We continue our conversation with Maponga J, the philosopher. Now, you were getting my viewers very, very excited about what you were getting into now, the space, which is Africa being stagnant. I mean, you spoke about Kwame Nkrumah, his country got liberated in 1957, if I'm not mistaken. That's a long time ago. But you look at Ghana, you look at, of course, there are pockets of things that you say, okay, this is good. But we generally are still so backward in so many things. What is the problem?
You cannot fit a round pole into a square hole. And I think what we are trying to do, the best illustration I can give you, let me dig over into my theological space.
Yes, please.
When David hears that there's a war and he carries his brothers some food, and he gets there and then he hears an uncircumcised Gentile swearing and cursing on the side of the mountain. And he says, no, I'm going to deal with that fella. Of course, you know the story well. So no, finally they said, no, you can go, but you can't go like this. And then they gave him a uniform that belonged to Saul, which meant his Saul's swords, Saul's armor, front and back, and shield, which was 3 to 4 times his own weight. David could hardly walk from Saul's tent to go and fight an enemy. Cut the long story short. The boy says, come on, guys. I've killed a bear. I've killed a lion. And I'll kill this one. But not in this uniform. Can you please take it off? Picks up some stone and he does what he always knew how to do as a young boy. The rest of the story becomes a celebration of how a primitive, uneducated, uncivilized, I'm using those words with a two meaning, both then and for the African. Primitive, uncivilized, uneducated, untrained, and this, too young, too everything. And yet he dug into his own experience of what he knew worked in the jungles of his life in the past. And he faces the problems of the future. And he knocks that giant on his head, to cut off his head with his own sword. The whole country celebrates. What am I saying? Until Africans learn, you can't fight this giant in borrowed clothes. You cannot challenge this Goliath when you are borrowing swords from him, armors from him. The whole idea of Africans, I pity us. We're an endangered species. If I look another 10, 15, 30, 50 years from now, we will remain as Africans in skin. But in terms of our brains and our minds, we'll have been so twisted. We'll be lucky if we still be able to dream in our traditional languages. So the problem is we have not used indigenous systems to challenge the Western systems. Here's the Great Zimbabwe. Here are the pyramids of Giza. Here are the old women who are able to deliver our children without even cutting a piece of flesh out of them. Here is the way in which we used to mine our own minerals. Here is the way we used to navigate these deserts and never get lost in them. Here is the way of doing animal husbandry and agriculture and etc. Indigenous ways. And these have been with us for thousands of years. Now we're busy planting corn and millet, complaining of drought and etc. And then on, because we're importing things onto our grounds that even our soil does not know.
Tell me about, you listed Robert Mugabe as one of those African revolutionaries that were exemplary in certain ways. And you coming from Zim, or you're Zimbabwean-born, your country has come of age, especially on the issue of land. You spoke about how people are saying, but you can't touch the land. There are laws that protect the status quo.
You're starting trouble there. You're starting trouble because you cannot tell me about land and then you put law in the same sentence. It's a conflict. Because then if land was taken without law, why must it be taken back with law? And by the way, by saying Mugabe is a revolutionary, does not endorse that the entire lapse of his leadership. I will put a stamp and say he was a good man. There's lots of issues that me and him could have not seen eye to eye. But being an objective man, when a man does what is right, come on guys, give it a tick. And when a man does what is wrong, then say, but on this one I don't agree. On the issue of land, I challenge every African leader, wherever you are, until you address issues of Africans owning their land, you are playing. Because land is a means of resource. Land is the only real estate. Land is that which connects us as Africans to our history. We can't practice spirituality without land. We can't talk of economics without land. We can't talk food security without land. We can't talk mining without land. And for these colonial systems to have come around in all the fertile land and demarcated around themselves, say, no, okay, we own this. Now, you can go back to the desert and see what you can do in the sand dunes there. I don't think it's fair. Therefore, my appreciation of the Robert Mugabe era is the confiscation of land. But again, people would criticize what Honorable Mnangagwa is doing now, repaying the white people for the land. And they may not understand. But no, I want to stand again, and I thought about it actually the other day and say, he has a point. We will show these white people that you stole from us. We took back the land. Now you want to put a bill on our necks that we must pay you 3.2 billion. Or else what? Okay, here's the 3.2 billion. Walk away. You're not coming back. So we'd rather pay you out. It's a divorce. Walk away. And then outside there, you still want to institute sanctions on this side. Thank you. If you divorce me as a husband or me as a wife, who I sleep with is none of your business. And don't put a small little station outside my gate trying to see who is coming into my bed, whether the Chinaman is coming, or the Indian is coming, or the United Emirates is coming, because you think they are the only sovereign lover to me, and no one else has permission. Even after you divorce me, it pleases you to see me suffering and my people complaining for non-employment. You are so sadistic and evil as a colonial system that you abuse a nation. And after you have abused them, you want to recommend how they must cry. And you want to recommend to them who must help them to heal.
Absolutely. And this whole thing of course, you are hammering on the need for self-sustenance, for us to have faith in our systems, for us to have faith in how we always lived. If there are tweaks, I suppose if there are tweaks to be made, let's make them, but let's be anchored on what we are. But others will argue then that, I mean, you were speaking about this global village. It doesn't look like we can survive by cutting the umbilical cord from the rest of the world. How do we maneuver ourselves?
I love what you're saying.
Yeah.
This is the time when I should show people Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the issue of cutting him umbilical cords.
Yeah.
You see, what the West is scared of are self-sustainable African governments.
Yeah.
That will not need France or Germany for anything.
Yeah.
When we reach that moment when we can produce our own cars, produce our own medicines, clean up our own water, bring up our own children, beneficiate our own resources, the whole West will be collapsing because their industries are founded on making Africa a harvesting ground of raw materials. Yeah. And let me share with you, all of us as Africans, every time a truck is taking raw materials out of your country, it's taking away jobs.
Yeah.
It's taking away factories. It's taking away because I lived in London. You would find that Luton area and etc. huge iron working industries where they're manufacturing balls for aeroplanes, for boats and what, and they don't even have a single quarry where they're digging that iron. And that is the backbone of the trade unions, the factories where they are manufacturing, using the iron from where? From Cisco Steel in Zimbabwe. Yeah. And then you talk about African countries are poor, but the raw material they're taking away from us, it is keeping your industries working. Why not our governments think just for once?
Yeah.
One truck of minerals, whether it's platinum or uranium or iron ore, when you put it at the harbor there, just follow it and see where it is going. And then follow it when it offloads there. Go to the factory there where they're using your mineral. Send your students to that country. Yeah. Study and understudy that technology. Bring them back after some 5 years and 10 years and say, from tomorrow morning, we're no more sending that stuff here. You come to collect it here. We are going to start making it. This is how the West has been able to develop their economies, by beneficiating on their resources. Africa is still struggling to produce more. We don't need to produce more.
Yeah.
Ask me what must do. Yeah. You must manufacture more.
You must manufacture more. And how about developing, how about codependence in Africa? Where, I mean, how is it possible that a neighboring country like Zimbabwe that is never, that is not at fault against any of its neighbors, all the punishment that are piled on it are coming from elsewhere, overseas, but somehow we can't even be of sustenance
to each other.
To each other.
When brothers fight, the famous proverb, and they fight to death, guess who inherits the estate? It is the foreigner. Yeah. And I think this is where farmers of thought comes in. That we're here to begin to say to the African child, stop fighting each other.
Yeah.
Stop fighting political issues for the politics of politics, or for the religion of religion. Yeah. And we call each other names and we quarrel and we fight over each other. We have a bigger problem from the global space. Yeah. And the global economy, understand it well, they want to control African economy. Politics is a playfield of weak people. The strong people have money. And when you have money, politics becomes prostitution because you can buy a politician. Money pays for bills. Are you following what I'm saying?
Yes.
And until Namibians own their own economy, they cannot influence their own politics. Because as long as you are depending on donor money and foreign people to walk into your economy through NGOs, blah, 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 human rights activists, blah, 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 human rights watchdogs, blah, 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 election this, and they're all around your parliament. Yeah. Have you ever been invited by America to come and supervise their elections there? When last did you go to Germany to supervise their elections? What makes them think? What audacity? Yeah. That after all these years of colonialism, you still want to come around and supervise and see how are we handling this democracy. And I've said this to the discomfort of many people. If democracy was the best way of governance, and you as a white man knew that Africa needed democracy. Why did we fight for it?
Yeah.
Were you not supposed to donate it to us?
To come through the barrel of the gun.
So we fought for it. Yeah. And after we fought for it, now you come around to write us rules, how to manage it. Mm-hmm. And I think this is, for me, this is the chaos of being brainwashed in social mainstream media, where you are made to think that there's democracy. There's no democracy without freedom. Yeah. There's no freedom without self-determination. There is no fairness in democracy in terms of African culture. Yeah. Because democracy comes with religion, comes with politics, and those two monsters don't respect local culture. Yeah. Yeah. So how do we constantly say we're living in a free country, but yet the Himba people are not free? You are right now as an independent government, slowly and constantly push them out of existence because you want them to be civilized. You want to vaccinate their children. Their women must be this, their husbands must be. So here we are as a democratic government, but we are a frustration to a local community, the Bushmen, who are walking freely between Botswana and Namibia. Now there's a big fence and men walking with guns, fellow black men, hunting fellow black men, because they cannot live their lives. They must conform their lives to the life of the colonialist that was here. This is, for me, this is the chaotic part of our African governments, when we lack to appreciate that we come into power not to enforce the rules of colonial men. We come into power to preserve our own people and preserve our own culture, preserve our dignity, and per se, learn from them and see what technologies are the Himba women bringing with their steaming stories and keeping their bodies healthy without bathing. What science is there? Can we take to the hospitals? What sciences are there? Can we take to the massage parlors to deal with issues of rheumatism and arthritis? What sciences are there to deal with issues of ovaries for women and all these problems of birth canals? Here is the Himba people practicing it. And yet you look around and cross your legs in educated spaces. No, that is too primitive. Are you not aware that even white medicine is witchcraft? Yeah. When they came to Africa and they saw women and men doing their own stuff, it's not witchcraft. They were asking, which craft are you using?
It was a pleasure, sir.
No, the pleasure is all mine.
Okay.
The pleasure is all mine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is Bishop Joshua Maponga. He's a philosopher. He's a motivational speaker. He's a man of many ideas for Africa.